Hello, my friends. We are back for story time, and we're continuing with the Agatha Christie novel, The Seven Dials Mystery. We begin with Chapter 7, Bundle Pays a Call. Getting hold of Bill presented few difficulties. Bundle motored up to town on the following morning, this time without adventures by the way, and rang him up. Bill responded with alacrity and made various suggestions as to lunch, tea, dinner, and dancing, all of which suggestions Bundle turned down as made. In a day or two, I'll come by and frivol with you, Bill, but for the moment I'm all business. Oh, said Bill, what a beastly bore. It's not that kind, said Bundle. It's anything but boring. Bill, do you know anyone named Jimmy Thesiger? Of course. So do you. No, I don't, said Bundle. Yes, you do. You must. Everyone knows old Jimmy. Sorry, said Bundle. Just for once, I don't seem to be everyone. Oh, but you must know Jimmy. Pink-faced chap, looks a bit of an ass, but really he's got many brains, as I have here. You don't say, said Bundle. He must feel a bit top-heavy when he walks about. Was that meant for sarcasm? It was a feeble effort at it. What does Jimmy Thesiger do? How do you mean? What does he do? Does being at the Foreign Office prevent you from understanding your native language? Oh, I see. You mean, has he got a job? No, he just tools around. Why should he do anything? In fact, more money than brains? Oh, I wouldn't say that. I told you just now that he has more brains than you'd think. Bundle was silent. She was feeling more and more doubtful. This gilded youth did not sound a very promising ally, and yet it was his name that had come first to the dying man's lips. Bill's voice chimed in suddenly, with singular appropriateness. Ronnie always thought a lot of his brains. You know, Ronnie Devereaux? Thesiger was his greatest pal. Ronnie? Bundle stopped undecided. Clearly, Bill knew nothing of the other's death. It occurred to Bundle for the first time that it was odd the morning papers had contained nothing of the tragedy. Surely it was a kind of spicy item the news would never have passed over. There could be one explanation, and one explanation only. The police, for reasons of their own, were keeping the matter quiet. Bill's voice was continuing. I haven't seen Ronnie for an age, not since the weekend down at your place. You know, when the poor old Jerry Wade passed out. He paused and then went on. Rather a foul business, that, altogether. I expect you've heard about it. I say, Bundle, are you there still? Of course I am here. Well, you haven't said anything for an age. I began to think you had gone away. No, I was just thinking over something. Should she tell Bill of Ronnie's death? She decided against it. It was not the sort of thing to be said over the telephone. But soon, very soon, she must have a meeting with Bill. In the meantime, Bill, hello? I might dine with you tomorrow night. Good. We'll have a dance afterwards. I've got a lot to talk about with you. As a matter of fact, I've been rather hard hit. The foulest luck. Well, tell me about it tomorrow, said Bundle, cutting him short rather unkindly. In the meantime, what is Jimmy Thesiger's address? Jimmy Thesiger? That's what I said. He's got rooms in Jerram Street. Do you mean Jerram Street or the other one? Bring that Class A brain to bear upon it. Yes, Jerram Street. Wait a bit and I'll give you the number. There was a pause. Are you still there? I'm always there. Well, one never knows with these dash telephones. The number is 103. Got it? 103. Thank you, Bill. Yes, but I say, what do you want it for? You said you didn't know him. I don't, but I shall in a half an hour. You're going around to his rooms. Quite right, Sherlock. Yes, but I say, well, for one thing, he won't be up. Won't be up? I shouldn't think so. I mean, who would if they hadn't got to? Look at it that way. You've got no idea what an effort is for me to get here at 11 every morning, and the fuss coddlers makes if I'm behind time is simply appalling. You haven't the least idea, Bundle, what a dog's life this is. You shall tell me about it tomorrow night, said Bundle. She slammed down the receiver and took stock of the situation. First, she glanced at the clock. It was 5:20 to 12. Despite Bill's knowledge of his friend's habits, she inclined to the belief that Mr. Thesiger would by now be in a fit state to receive visitors. She took a taxi to 103 Jerram Street. The door was opened by a perfect example of the retired gentleman's gentleman. His face, expressionless and polite, was such a face as may be found by the score in that particular district of London. "Will you come this way, madame?" He ushered her upstairs into an extremely comfortable sitting room containing leather-covered armchairs of immense dimensions. Sunk in one of those monstrosities was another girl, rather younger than Bundle, a small, fair girl dressed in black. "What name shall I say, madame?" "I won't give any names," said Bundle. "I just want to see Mr. Thesiger on important business." The grave gentleman bowed and withdrew, shutting the door noiselessly behind him. There was a pause. "It's a nice morning," said the fair girl timidly. "It's an awful nice morning," agreed Bundle. There was another pause. "I motored up from the country this morning," said Bundle, plunging once more into speech, "and I thought it was going to be one of those foul fogs, but it wasn't." "No," said the other girl, "it wasn't." And she added, "I've come up from the country too." Bundle eyed her more attentively. She had been slightly annoyed at finding the other there. Bundle belonged to the energetic order of people who like to get on with it, and she foresaw the second visitor would have to be disposed of and got rid of before she could broach her own business. It was not a topic she could introduce before a stranger. Now, as she looked more closely, an extraordinary idea rose in her brain. Could it be? Yes, the girl, in deep mourning, her black, silk-clad ankles showed that. It was a long shot, but Bundle was convinced of her idea that it was right. She drew a long breath. "Look here," she said. "Are you by any chance Lorraine Wade?" Lorraine's eyes opened wide. "Yes, I am." "How clever of you to know. We've never met, have we?" Bundle shook her head. "I wrote to you yesterday, though. I'm Bundle Brent." "It was so very kind of you to send me Jerry's letter," said Lorraine. "I've written to thank you. I never expected to see you here." "I tell you why I'm here," said Bundle. "Did you know Ronnie Devereux?" Lorraine nodded. "He came over the day that Jerry, and he's been to see me 2 or 3 times since. He was one of Jerry's greatest friends." "I know." "Well, he's dead." Lorraine's lips parted in surprise. "Dead? But he always seemed so fit." Bundle narrated the events of the preceding day as briefly as possible. A look of fear and horror came into Lorraine's face. "Then it is true." "It is true." "What is true?" "What I've thought, what I've been thinking all these weeks. Gerald didn't die a natural death. He was killed." "You've thought that? Have you?" "Yes. Jerry would never have taken things to make him sleep. He gave the little ghost a laugh. He slept much too well to need them. I always thought it queer, and he thought it so too. I know he did." "Who?" "Ronnie. And now this happens. Now he's killed too." She paused and then went on. "That's what I came for today. That letter of Jerry's you sent me. As soon as I read it, I tried to get a hold of Ronnie, but they said he was away. So I thought I'd come to see Jimmy. He was Ronnie's other great friend. I thought perhaps he'd tell me what I ought to do." "You mean," Bundle paused, "about 7 Dials?" Lorraine nodded. "You see," she began, but then at that moment, Jimmy Thesiger entered the room. Chapter 8. Visitors for Jimmy. We must at this point go back some 20 minutes earlier, to a moment when Jimmy Thesiger, emerging from the midst of sleep, was conscious of a familiar voice speaking unfamiliar words. His sleep-ridden brain tried for a moment to cope with the situation, but failed. He yawned and rolled over again. "A young lady, sir, has called to see you." The voice was implacable. So prepared was it to go on repeating the statement indefinitely that Jimmy resigned himself to the inevitable. He opened his eyes and blinked. "Ah, Stevens," he said. "Say that again." "A young lady, sir, has called to see you." Oh, Jimmy strove to grasp the situation. "Why?" "I couldn't say, sir." "No, I suppose not." No, he thought it over. "I suppose you couldn't." Stephen swooped down upon a tray by the bedside. "I will bring you some fresh tea, sir. This is cold." "You think that I ought to get up and see the lady?" Stevens made no reply, but he held his back very stiff, and Jimmy read the signs correctly. "Oh, very well," he said. "I suppose I'd better. She didn't give her name?" "No, sir." She couldn't be, by any possible chance, Aunt Jemima, could she? Because if so, I'm damned if I'm going to get up. The lady, sir, could not possibly be anyone's aunt. I should say, unless the youngest of a large family." "Aha," said Jimmy. "Young and lovely, is she? What kind is she?" "The young lady, sir, is most undoubtedly strictly comme il faut, if I may use the expression." "You may use it," said Jimmy graciously. "Your French pronunciation, Stevens, if I may say so, is very good. Much better than mine." "I am gratified to hear it, sir. I have lately been taking correspondence course in French." "Have you really? You're a wonderful chap, Stevens." Stevens smiled in a superior fashion and left the room. Jimmy lay trying to recall the names of any young lady and lovely girl strictly comme il faut who might be likely to come calling upon him. Stevens re-entered with fresh tea, and as Jimmy sipped it, he felt a pleasurable curiosity. "You've given her the paper and all that, I hope, Stevens," he said. "I supplied her with the Morning Post and Punch, sir." A ring at the bell took him away. In a few minutes he returned. "Another young lady, sir." "What?" Jimmy clutched his head. "Another young lady? She declines to give her name, sir, but says her business is important." Jimmy stared at him. "This is damned odd, Stevens, damned odd. Look here, what time did I come home last night?" "Just upon 5 o'clock, sir." "And was how was I?" "Just a little cheerful, sir, nothing more. Inclined to sing 'Rule Britannia.'" "What an extraordinary thing," said Jimmy. "Rule Britannia, eh? I cannot imagine myself in a sober state ever singing 'Rule Britannia.' Some latent patriotism must have emerged under the stimulus of just a couple too many. I was celebrating at Mustard and Cress, I remember." "Not nearly such an innocent spot as it sounds, Stevens." He paused. "I was wondering—" "Yes, sir." "I was wondering whether, under the aforementioned stimulus, I had put an advertisement in the newspaper asking for a nursery governess or something of that sort." Stevens coughed. "2 girls turning up. It looks odd. I shall issue the Mustard and Cress in future." "That's a good word, Stevens. Issue. I met it in a crossword the other day and took a fancy to it." Whilst he was talking, Jimmy was rapidly apparating himself. At the end of 10 minutes he was ready to face his own unknown guests. As he opened the door of the sitting room, the first person he saw was a dark, slim girl who was totally unknown to him. She was standing by the mantelpiece, leaning against it. Then his glance went on to the big leather-covered armchair, and his heart missed a beat. Lorraine. It was she who rose and spoke first, a little nervously. "You must be very surprised to see me, but I had to come. I'll explain it in a minute. This is Lady Eileen Brent. Bundle, that's what I'm usually known as. You've probably heard of me from Bill Eversley." "Oh, rather, of course I have," said Jimmy, endeavoring to cope with the situation. "I say, do sit down and let's have a cocktail or something." But both girls declined. "As a matter of fact," continued Jimmy, "I'm only just out of bed." "That's what Bill said," remarked Bundle. "I told him I was coming round to see you, and he said you wouldn't be up." "Well, I'm up now," said Jim encouragingly. "It's about Jerry," said Lorraine, "and now about Ronnie." "What do you mean by 'and now about Ronnie'?" "He was shot yesterday." "What?" cried Jimmy. Bundle told her story for the second time. Jimmy listened like a man in a dream. "Old Ronnie shot," he murmured. "What is this damn business?" He sat down on the edge of the chair, thinking for a minute or two, and then spoke in a quiet, level voice. "There's something I think I ought to tell you." "Yes?" said Brundle encouragingly. "It was on the day Jerry Wade died. On the way over to break the news to you," he nodded at Lorraine. in the car, Ronnie said something to me. That is to say, he started to tell me something. There was something he wanted to tell me, and he began about it, and then he said he was bound by a promise and couldn't go on. Bound by a promise, said Lorraine thoughtfully. That's what he said. Naturally, I didn't press him after that, but he was an damned odd all through. I got the impression then that he suspected, well, foul play. I thought he'd tell the doctor so, but no, not even a hint. So I thought I'd been mistaken. And afterwards, with the evidence and all, well, it seemed such a very clear case, I thought my suspicions had been a bosh. But you think Ronnie's still suspected? Asked Bundle. Jimmy nodded. That's what I think now. Why, none of us have seen anything of him since. I believe he was playing a lone hand, trying to find out the truth about Jerry's death. And what's more, I believe he did find out. That's what the devil shot him. And then tried to send word to me, but only to get out those 2 words. 7 dials, said Bundle, and shivered a little. 7 dials, said Jimmy gravely. At any rate, we've got that to go with. Bundle turned to Lorraine. You were just going to tell me. Oh, yes. First, about the letter. She spoke to Jimmy. Jerry left a letter. Lady Eileen. Bundle found it. She explained the circumstances in a few words. Jimmy listened, keenly interested. This was the first he had heard of the letter. Lorraine took it from her bag and handed it to Jimmy. He read it, then looked across at her. This is where you can help us. What was it Jerry wanted you to forget? Lorraine's brows wrinkled a little in perplexity. It's so hard to remember exactly now. I opened the letter of Jerry's by mistake. It was written on a cheap sort of paper, I remember, and a very illiterate handwriting. It had some address in 7 dials on the head of it. I realized it wasn't for me, so I put it back in the envelope without reading it. Sure? Asked Jimmy very gently. Lorraine laughed for the first time. I know what you think, and I admit that women are curious, but you see, this didn't even look interesting. It was a kind of list of names and dates. Names and dates? Said Jimmy thoughtfully. Jerry didn't seem to mind much, continued Lorraine. He laughed. He asked me if I had ever heard of the Mafia, and then said it would be queer if a society like the Mafia started in England. But that kind of a secret society didn't take on much English people. Our criminals, he said, haven't got a picturesque imagination. Jimmy pursued his lips into a whistle. I'm beginning to see, he said. 7 Dials must be the headquarters of some secret society, as he says in his letter to you. He thought it rather a joke to start with, but evidently it wasn't a joke. He says as much. And there's something else. His anxiety that you should forget what he told you. There can be only one reason for that. If that society suspected you had any knowledge of the activity, you too would be in danger. Gerald realized the peril, and he was terribly anxious for you. He stopped, then he went on quietly. I rather fancy that we're all going to be in danger if we go on with this. If, cried Bundle indignantly. I'm talking to you too. It's different for me. I was poor Ronnie's pal. He looked at Bundle. You've done your bit. You've delivered the message he sent me. No, for God's sake, keep it out. Just keep out of it. You and Lorraine. Bundle looked questioningly at the other girl. Her own mind was definitely made up, but she gave no indication of it just then. She had no wish to push Lorraine Wade into a dangerous undertaking, but Lorraine's small face was alight at once with indignation. You say that. Do you think for 1 minute I'd be contented to keep out of it when they killed Jerry, my own dear Jerry, the best and dearest and kindest brother any girl ever had, the only person belonging to me I had in the whole world? Jimmy cleared his throat uncomfortably. Lorraine, he thought, was wonderful, simply wonderful. Look here, he said awkwardly, you mustn't say that about being alone in the world and all that rot. You've got lots of friends, only too glad to do what they can. See what I mean? It is possible that Lorraine did, for she suddenly blushed, and to cover her confusion began to talk nervously. That's settled, she said. I'm going to help. Nobody's going to stop me. And so am I, of course, said Bundle. They both looked at Jimmy. Yes, he said slowly. Yes, quite so. They looked at him inquiringly. I was just wondering, said Jimmy, how are we going to begin? Chapter 9. Plans. Jimmy's words lifted the discussion at once into a more practical sphere. All things considered, he said, we haven't got much to go on. In fact, just the words 7 Dials. As a matter of fact, I don't even know exactly where 7 Dials is. But anyway, we can't very well comb out the whole of that district house by house. We could, said Bundle. Well, perhaps we could eventually, though I'm not sure. I imagine it's a well-populated area, but it wouldn't be very subtle. The word reminded him of the girl Socks, and he smiled. Of course, there's the part of the country where Rami was shot. We could nose around there, but the police are probably doing everything we could do, and doing it much better. What I like about you, said Bundle sarcastically, is your cheerful and optimistic disposition. Never mind her, Jimmy, said Lorraine softly. Go on. Don't be so impatient, said Jimmy to Bundle. All the best sleuths approach a case this way, by eliminating unnecessary and unprofitable investigation. I'm coming now to the third alternative, Gerald's death. Now, what do we know, and was it murder, by the way? You do both believe that, don't you? Yes, said Lorraine. Yes, said Bundle. Good, so do I. Well, it seems to me that there we do stand some faint chance. After all, if Jerry didn't take the coral himself, someone must have got into his room and put it there, dissolved it into a glass of water, so that when he woke up and drank it off, and, of course, left the empty box or bottle or whatever it was. You agree with that? Yes, said Bundle slowly, but... Excuse me. Wait, and that someone must have been in the house at that time. It couldn't very well have been someone from outside. No, agreed Bundle, but more readily this time. Very well, now that narrows down things considerably. To begin with, I suppose a good many of the servants are family ones. They're your lot, I mean. Yes, said Bundle. Practically all the staff stayed when we let it. All the principal ones are there still. Of course, there have been changes among the under-servants. Exactly, that's what I'm getting at. You, he addressed Bundle, must go into all that. Find out when the new servants were engaged. What about footmen, for instance? One of the footmen is new. John is his name. Well, make inquiries about John and about any others who have come recently. I suppose, said Bundle slowly, it must have been a servant. It couldn't have been one of the guests. I don't see how that's possible. Who were there exactly? Well, there were 3 girls, Nancy and Helen and Socks. Socks Devontree? I know her. May have been. Girl who was always saying things were subtle. That's Socks, all right. Subtle is one of her words. And then there's Jerry Wade and me and Bill Eversley and Ronnie. And of course, Sir Oswald and Lady Coote. Oh, and Pongo. Who's Pongo? Chap called Bateman, secretary to old Coote. Solemn sort of cove, but very conscientious. I was at school with him. There doesn't seem anything very suspicious there, remarked Lorraine. No, there doesn't, said Bundle. As you say, we'll have to look amongst the servants. By the way, you don't suppose that clock being thrown out of the window had anything to do with it? A clock thrown out of the window, said Jimmy, staring. It was the first he had heard of it. I can't see how it can have anything to do with it, said Bundle, but it's odd somehow. There seems no sense in it. I remember, said Jimmy slowly. I went in to see poor old Jerry, and there were clocks arranged along the mantelpiece. I remember noticing there were only 7, not 8. We gave a sudden shiver and explained himself apologetically. Sorry, but somehow those clocks have always given me the shivers. I dream of them sometimes. I'd hate to go into that room in the dark and see them there right now in a row. You wouldn't be able to see them if it was dark, said Bundle practically. Not unless they had luminous dials. Oh! She gave a sudden gasp and the color rushed to her cheeks. Don't you see? 7 dials. The other looked at her doubtfully, but she insisted with increasing vehemence. It must be. It can't be a coincidence. There was a pause. You may be right, said Jimmy Thesiger at last. It's dashed odd. Bundle started questioning him eagerly. Who bought the clocks? All of us. Who thought of them? All of us. Nonsense. Somebody must have thought of them first. It didn't happen that way. We were discussing what we could do to get Jerry up, and Pongo said alarm clock, and somebody said one would be no good. Somebody else said, Bill Eversley, I think said, why not get a dozen? And we all said, good egg, and hoofed off to get them. We got one each, and an extra one for Pongo, and one for Lady Coot, just out of generosity of our hearts. There was nothing premeditated about it. It just happened. Bundle was silenced, but not convinced. Jimmy proceeded to sum it up methodically. I think we can say we're sure of certain facts. There's a great society, a great secret society, within points of resemblance of the Mafia's existence. Jerry Wade came to know about it. At first he treated it as a rather joke, as an absurdity, shall we say. He couldn't believe it in being such a really dangerous thing. But later something happened to convince him, and then he got wind of it in earnest. I rather fancy he must have said something to Ronnie Devereaux about it. Anyway, when he was put out of the way, Ronnie suspected, and he must have known enough to get on the same track himself. The unfortunate thing is that we've got to start quite from the outer darkness. We haven't got the knowledge the other two had. Perhaps that's an advantage, said Lorraine coolly. They won't suspect us, and therefore they won't be trying to put us out of the way. I wish I felt sure about that, said Jimmy in a worried voice. You know, Lorraine, old Jerry himself wanted you to keep out of this too. Don't you think you could? No, I couldn't, said Lorraine. Don't let's start discussing that again. It's only a waste of time. At the mention of the word time, Jimmy's eyes rose to the clock, and he uttered an exclamation of astonishment. He rose and opened the door. Stevens? Yes, sir. What about a spot of lunch, Stevens? Could it be managed? I anticipated that, sir. I anticipated it would be required, sir. Mrs. Stevens has made preparations accordingly. That's wonderful, man, said Jimmy, as he returned, heaving a sigh of relief. Brain, you know, sheer brain. He takes correspondence courses. I sometimes wonder if they do any good for me. Don't be silly, said Lorraine. Stevens opened the door and proceeded to bring in the most recherche meal. An omelette was followed by quails and the very lightest things in soufflés. Why are men so happy when they're single, said Lorraine tragically. Why are they so much better looked after by other people than by us? Oh, but that's rot, you know, said Jimmy. I mean, they're not. How could they be? I often think... He stammered and then stopped. Lorraine blushed again. Suddenly, Bundle let out a whoop, and both the others started violently. Idiot, said Bundle. Imbecile. Me, I mean. I knew there was something I'd forgotten. What? You know, Cotters. George Lomax, I mean. I've heard of him a good deal, said Jimmy. From Bill and Ronnie, you know. Well, Cotters is giving some sort of a dry party next week, and he's had a warning letter from 7 Dials. What? Cried Jimmy excitedly, leaning forward. You can't mean it. Yes, I do. He told Father about it. Now, what do you think that points to? Jimmy leaned back on his chair. He thought rapidly and carefully. At last he spoke. His speech was brief but to the point. Something's going to happen at that party, he said. That's what I think, said Bundle. It all fits in, said Jimmy, almost dreamily. He turned to Lorraine. How old were you when the war was on? He asked unexpectedly. 9. No, 8. And Jerry, I suppose, was about 20. Most lads of 20 fought in the war. Jerry didn't. No, said Lorraine, about after thinking about a minute or two. No, Jerry wasn't a soldier. I don't know why. I can tell you why, said Jimmy. Or at least I can make a very shrewd guess. He was out of England from 1915 to 1918. I've taken the trouble to find that out, and nobody seems to know exactly where he was. I think he was in Germany. The color rose in Lorraine's cheeks. She looked at Jimmy with admiration. How clever of you. He spoke German well, didn't he? Oh, yes, like a native. I'm sure I might. That is, I'm sure I'm right. Listen, you two. Jerry Wade was at the Foreign Office. He appeared to be the same sort of admirable, amiable idiot, excuse the term, but you know what I mean, as Bill Eversley and Ronnie Devereaux. A purely ornamental exercise, or exercescence, if you will. But in reality, he was something quite different. I think Jerry Wade was the real thing. Our Secret Service is supposed to be the best in the world. I think Jerry Wade was pretty high up in that service, and that explains everything. I remember saying idly that last evening at Chimneys that Jerry couldn't be quite such an ass as he made out to be. That is, as he made himself out to be. And if you're right, said Bundle, practical as ever, then the thing's bigger than we thought. This Seven Dials business isn't merely criminal, it's international. One thing's certain, somebody has got to be at his house party, the party of Lomax's. Bundle made a slight grimace. I know George well, but he doesn't like me. He never thinks of asking me to a serious gathering. All the same, I might. Excuse me. She remained a moment, lost in thought. Do you think I could work it out through Bill? Asked Jimmy. He's bound to be there with Cotter's right-hand man. He might bring me along somehow or other. I don't see why not, said Bundle. You could have to prime Bill and make him say the right things. He's incapable of thinking for himself. What do you suggest? Asked Jimmy humbly. Oh, it's quite easy. Describe Bill as a rich young man interested in politics, anxious to stand for Parliament. George will fall for it at once. You know what these political parties are, always looking for new, rich young men. The richer Bill says you are, the easier it will be to manage. Sort of being described as a Rothschild. I don't mind, said Jimmy. Then I think that's practically settled. I'm dining with Bill tomorrow. And I'll get a list of who is to be there. That will be useful. I'm sorry you can't be there, Jimmy, but on the whole, I think it's all for the best. I'm not so sure I shan't be there, said Bundle. Cotters hates me like poison, but there's always other ways. He became meditative. What about me? Asked Lorraine in a small, meek voice. You're not in on this act, said Jimmy instantly. See, after all, we've got to have someone on the outside to what? Said Lorraine. Jimmy decided not to pursue that tack. He appealed to Bundle. Look here, he said. Lorraine must keep out of this, mustn't she? I certainly think she'd better. Next time, said Jimmy kindly. And suppose there isn't a next time, said Lorraine. Oh, there probably will be. Not a doubt about it. I see. I'm just to go home and wait. That's it, said Jimmy, with every appearance of relief. I thought you'd understand. You see, explained Bundle, three of us forcing our way in might look rather suspicious. And you would be particularly difficult. You do see that, don't you?" "Oh, yes," said Lorraine. "Then it's settled. You do nothing," said Jimmy. "I do nothing," said Lorraine meekly. Bundle looked at her in sudden suspicion. The tameness with which Lorraine was taking it seemed hardly natural. Lorraine looked at her. Her eyes were blue and guileless. They met Bundle's without a quiver, even the lashes. Bundle was only partly satisfied. She found the meekness of Lorraine Wade highly suspicious. All right, my friends, that is all for tonight. We'll continue this tomorrow night. This has been Indiana Holmes. Love to you all, and good night.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.